Let's go there. Here we go. All right, so we are now streaming live inside the Florida Wrestling Room. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. It's Friday. It's Ask the Ref. I know we're a little bit late today, but it is what it is. We have Alex here, the ref that was on the mat during this this match that has everybody talking, and we've got Cipriano here who wants to put this to bed, so he's reached out to his good friend who is a good ref and brought him on here so that we can discuss this. I'm going to share my screen with Cipriano. So if you see me looking down, trying to figure out how to do this, I am going to share my screen, and then I am going to pull up the match, and we'll let Sips and Alex kind of discuss what happened there, and kind of go from there. If you guys have questions or anything, just kind of throw them on the feed. I'm going to bring the feed up on my phone here so that I can make sure that I see it, because I'm not going to be able to see it on the computer because I'm going to have the computer shared with everybody. So I'm just trying to get this here working. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts. Sorry guys, I'm not the best at this, but I'm learning. All right, so share screen. I'm guessing I hit this button right here, and then I hit this button here, and I go share.
All right, Dan, too, before we get started, I'm just going to start asking Alex some questions, okay, just to clear the air about some conspiracy theories that were out there, okay?
Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm sharing my screen here, so
yeah.
Let me know if you guys can.
Yeah, we can see. I can see the match going now.
Same here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna press pause on the match right now. I'm just opening it up, and then I'm gonna press pause. And when you guys are ready, go. All right, guys, I'm letting it go over to Sips now and Alex, and it's their show.
All right, guys. So, Alex, known you a good while. I know you to be just a great guy and a good official, and always have a clear, level head.
Thank you.
In regards to situations and things that happen on the mat. So I'm just going to ask you some questions because it's out there on the internet and Facebook and about potential conspiracy theories, and just putting all that to bed and to rest so we cannot hear about it anymore. And just more mature listeners will prevail, right? So
Absolutely.
Obvious questions. All right. Were you paid by Lake Island Prep to throw any matches?
No.
Okay. Do you hate American Heritage?
No.
Do you have anything against Sean Sheldon or JP?
I do not.
Okay. So now let's get on with it, because I'm tired of seeing the theories on Facebook about there being a conspiracy over you having it out for American Heritage or against the coaches. So now that we've cleared that up, we're going to start with the 195-pound match, because, again, that's the center of controversy where videos keep getting posted and mom and dad experts and things like that want to weigh in and think they know what happened or have an inkling. So we're going to get to it from an official's perspective, the guy that was on the whistle for this match, so that we can just talk it through. All right. So we're going to pick it up in the second period. It's 4-2. There's 30 seconds left. And then go ahead and roll footage there, Dan, and we'll start going through it.
So this is where we're starting at. Yep, here we go. All right.
So from here, you have an escape. Match is now 4-3 green.
Video is a little choppy, but
A little bit, yeah.
you can see the scoring situations here at least.
Mm-hmm. Guys are wrestling. End of the period, going into the third. Green's choice. Green takes bottom. Red lets him up for an escape. So 1 point Green going into the third. Takes a second for track to load through that sequence. So now we have 5-3 Green. And if it helps, Dan, if you want to fast forward a little bit as we get a little closer to the situation everyone wants to talk about, we can do that as well.
Yeah, you guys tell me. I mean, you guys are in control.
Yeah, let's move it to like the last 30 seconds of this period. I'm not completely sure, but I think it's around there, at least where you hit the green, kid in green for stalling, and then the coach comes to the table, so we can just talk through that
All
sequence.
right, I'm trying to figure out how to use.
The bottom corner.
Huh?
When like all this stuff came up, it was in the bottom corner.
Oh, okay. Trying to figure out how to use this computer, okay? I don't know how to use it.
It came right there.
Here we go.
The bottom corner. The bottom corner has a fast forward.
Right, I'm going. Where are we going to? We're going to
Closer to the end of the third period. Yep.
right here. So
We can go back just a little bit. Yep.
Right here.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So the sequence here, wrestlers are working. We have a stalling on Green. It's their second stall one. So scores now added to that. So from there, want to say we either have injury or blood in this following sequence. So we have the stall warning. Coach comes to the table to ask about the stalling call, and stalling by rule is a judgment call. And any questions concerning referee's judgment is a coach's misconduct. And this was a warning. Now, we weren't aware of this, but track has a glitch where when the misconduct is added into the system, for some reason, it adds a match point. And we were told that at the state tournament, about 13 of those glitches happened. And this is obviously the one that gets caught in the biggest stage. And it's unfortunate because obviously a point gets added to the match score, sending the match into overtime where maybe it shouldn't have. And when we go to check the score on that, I know when we fast forward a little quicker or further along, Coach Sheldon does bring me to the table, ask me to verify the score during, I want to say, one of the injury or blood timeouts. And the language that I used at the table could have been probably a lot more investigative. It was more to verify the score. And the table looked at me and he said, "Hey, I got the right score." So we took him at his word there and we kept forward. And I checked with Bob, my assistant, and he had the same thing. And at that time, we went ahead and moved forward. And when we had the second time where coach brings us to check again, and we're saying we're going into overtime, the thing that we want to kind of clear here is we have a match, high intensity match, a big stage. We don't want to have delays that are unnecessary to the wrestlers and disrupt the flow of the match. So when we already verified it once, we thought we were good to go. Again, for me, I should have been a little bit more investigative. I should have asked probably a little bit more about the questions of how we got to the score. And I probably should have even gone behind the table to look at what he had to see what had happened there. Because again, there is some hesitation and, you know, I wish I could have done something different. Looking at it now, it's unfortunate. And I feel like an apology is definitely warranted here for the American Heritage coach and wrestler in the situation, because for the lack of due diligence on my part, at least, this match went in overtime when maybe it shouldn't have. And as a result, the other wrestler won. Not to say that he wouldn't have, because I'm not going to play the what if game. But again, that's an error that potentially affects the outcome of the match. And, you know, I take a lot of accountability and shame in it. We work really hard year round. For me, it's been 7 years, and we want to avoid this kind of situation from happening. And, you know, because the way we approached it, by rule, we verified with a score, but maybe didn't take that second extra step. And now we have this huge controversy going around, and it's unfortunate. And, you know, we do our best here, but there's the human error there. I mean, I missed it there. Score table had no issue, or didn't have anything to save us there. And obviously the assistant could have caught it. Coach could have stayed by rule at the table, because once he leaves, once the next match restarts, it is no longer a correctable error for the score. And as a result, we weren't able to fix it once it was caught and brought to the head table.
And to be clear, you don't even know about the point being added until you after you blow the whistle and look up. You wouldn't have caught that. So,
Correct.
And as officials, we were blind to that situation as well, because when we were off the mat, watching it back on video, that's when that was discovered. And by that point, the 220 match was already over. So, you know, there's learnings and for everybody on this, right? I mean, it's a calamity of unfortunate events is really the way to describe it. You know, it's a lesson for coaches that, you know, if your assistant is in the corner, and again, Sean Sheldon is probably one of the most technical, gifted coaches in the state. So to me, the assistant probably isn't going to offer much that Sean probably isn't going to instruct his wrestler at that point, right? So I think there's some onus on coaches to potentially always keep score in the corner, so that you can, with some educational resources at your fingertips, understand what the score should have been and argue that in a more emphatic way without going no crazy and over the top, right? So that is some learnings, I think, for all coaches going forward, is just have somebody in your corner keeping score. Because again, referees are human. Also, table workers, for the most part, are a volunteer basis. Almost none of them get paid, okay? Granted, officials were working that table, but we're not computer software geniuses either. So we couldn't forecast that there was a glitch within that system until after. So absolutely, I think Alex is right. Maybe we could have been a little more patient and approachable at the table. But I think also, too, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but wrestler in the green had taken a few injury times. So you wanted to minimize the breaks. So once you heard the score was correct from the table, you were good with it.
Yeah, because again, we're not trying to stop this match any more than it already had been, because again, we have wrestlers that are working hard, and if you take them out of that flow like that, it has an impact on the match. And, you know, we're part of the spirit of officiating is to be prompt in your judgments and your authority on the mat, so that we don't interfere with wrestling. So it can be about the wrestlers.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I've had some people since yesterday, me posting that, I've gotten some private messages, and
Sure.
maybe just because of everything that's kind of taken place in that feed, they didn't want to jumble up in there. One of the questions was, there was a lot of, it seemed like there was a lot of stalling or whirlybird stuff, and it didn't seem like it seemed like you could have taken more points than you did. You kind of gave the opportunity to go. So there were opportunities that you could have probably been more effective against the wrestler, but you kind of gave him a break and let him relax, knowing that he was somebody that had been injured and hasn't wrestled as many matches. Talk a little bit about that, and if there were some areas where that could have happened. And then somebody asked, there was a situation where there was a takedown scored against Tobia, and it was scored 2 points, but in the video it showed that Easton's feet were out of bounds, so it could have been an out of bounds call. And then talk about, somebody asked if the coaches were 100% certain of the score and were confident and they knew the score, wouldn't they have maybe had more confliction or you know, more like
Conviction, I think you mean.
conviction?
Yeah.
Like, hey,
I think,
no, I know the score, stop and let's do it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And that was questions that were sent to me. Please, no hate mail.
Mhm.
Well, what I would say to you is, we've talked about this a few times without directly talking about this match in our other Ask the Ref segments, right?
Yes.
You just don't leave the table. There are coaches I know, again, that it would have taken the National Guard to remove them from the mat had they felt that the score was wrong, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you just don't allow wrestling to continue. If you feel the score was wrong, you don't leave the table. No one's going to get mad at you for that, because our job would then be, okay, let's go behind there and check it out. But Alex gave his answer. Sean went back to the corner and we were in overtime. So to that, I wouldn't have left, right? And then if the match ended and you still have an issue, you cannot leave the wrestling area. That is the rule. So if you left the wrestling area and the next match starts, to Alex's earlier point, you've negated the potential for protest
Because
by
at that point,
rule.
it's no longer
And
correct.
again, it goes
Okay,
right.
yeah, that's what
And
was.
again, it goes back to the original point is you as a coach hurt your kid in that scenario, right? It's great that he can run a solid half and a crunch cradle and all of those things. But when your kid needs you in that moment, you essentially let him down a little bit there. So I think that's where that's where the calamity of errors exists, right? There's errors on the coaches, the glitch within track. Yeah, maybe Alex could have been a little more investigative, but the other elements that were there with the injury times and blood times and things like that, you didn't want to give unnecessary breaks. And once you got confirmation from the table, it happened.
And I do want to be clear that there wasn't questions on any of the judgment calls or the scoring in those situations. It mostly came down to that error that led to the calamity. And my assistant is the type of guy where if he didn't agree with something that I had, he would have let me know, and he was with me on those things. And as a result, we continue moving forward on those. And again, it came down to the glitch in track, and as Sip has mentioned, a lot of things not working the way they needed to by rule to mitigate that or fix that.
And just so I can draw just so everybody gets a bit better picture of what officials go through as a result of stuff like this, Alex, how were the immediate days following the state tournament for you? How did you do?
So the first night I had to get escorted to my car because some people might have been waiting for me in the parking lot. I mean, I personally felt sick to my stomach that something like that happens. I mean, we don't take pride or get excited when something controversial or a war story comes out. Our job is to make this stuff go as smooth as possible and give these kids the best chance of staying safe and competing fairly within the rules. So when this happens, I mean, me personally, as Sips mentioned earlier, we're really hard on each other, and that's why our association does so well, but we're even harder on ourselves. And I mean, I didn't sleep very well for 3 days. Not that that matters or it's going to fix anything, but we don't take this stuff lightly. And, it's hard. And when you see all of the hate mail, obviously it doesn't help. I mean, I unfollowed the page for about a month or so just because I knew it wasn't going to do me any favors. I know that based on the official code of ethics, we have to be very careful, Sip and I, with participating in forums and social media because it's part of our ethics as officials. And it's in the rule book that we have to be very ethical and above reproach on these things. So it's kind of like until this moment happened, we don't have a voice to communicate these things and kind of hash through them. And it's hard. I mean, what we do, we're always under scrutiny for the calls that we do and don't make. And we're not perfect. As hard as we work towards these things and as much as we try to get the calls right, sometimes things happen. And unfortunately, it happens on the biggest stage with all these different circumstances. And, for me, it's something I'm going to have to live with. I'm going to have to get better from. And believe me, I've been working really hard this offseason to make sure that this never happens again. And it's all we can do at this point. I can't go back in time and snap my fingers and assume that we can go back to that sequence and fix it right then and there. But it's just a hard lesson. And it's unfortunate, but it's part of wrestling.
What I find amazing too, and in sports, in any sports, the difference of this conversation and and not having this conversation is either a ride out or an escape. Because in overtime, if he rides Easton out and wins, or am I saying that right? Then this whole
So
thing
in
doesn't come up,
overtime,
or-
if you want me to kind of clarify that sequence, in overtime, the American Heritage wrestler took his second injury time. And by rule, when he takes that second injury time, the other wrestler has choice at the next restart. So the Lake Highland Prep wrestler has the choice at the restart, takes bottom. Because that first overtime is sudden victory and first point scored wins the match. Once he gets that escape, the match is over and he wins.
But it's crazy we don't have the conversation if it goes the other way, right? Nobody remembers the call. Nobody remembers the argument. Nobody remembers the conversation. It's happened. Our favorite football teams, our favorite basketball teams. That 1 second that goes off the clock, the ball's in the air, you know. So it's
And a good
terrible,
statistic to kind of show the margin of error in sports in general, the best of the best in the NBA, guys who get paid six figures to do what they do, the very best get 94% of their calls right. I mean, 6% of the time they're wrong. And I mean, that's the very best of the best.
I think I've had a conversation with Cipriano, and I don't know if it's been, we've kind of formed a relationship since I started this, and it's been great. And every Friday we kind of just BS on Ask the Ref, right? And I think he said to me, and I don't remember if it was on the air or off the air, but he said, look, if I went back and looked at every single match throughout every state tournament, regional tournament in general, we're going to find a call that maybe could have went the other way or should have went the other way or was a bad call. Unfortunately, the level of the playing field here was the pinnacle of our Florida State thing. So that's why it became more polarizing. But
I think the other thing is, look, everything Alex said too regarding the scrutiny, we know all of that and we still show up to do it. It's because of the love of the sport we have and our way to give back. Again, like I covered in the first one, none of us are going home rich being an official. Okay. We sacrifice countless hours away from our families and, things that we could be doing too, it separates us away from that too. Because these tournaments are not short, they're long, arduous hours, right? And being on your feet that long and being in the physical condition you need to be in to be a competent official is a commitment. So again, unfortunately, things like this happen in every tournament throughout your career, but they will always stick in your head to make sure that, unfortunately, you'll always remember it, but in a way to enforce that it doesn't happen again, right?
Now, in this situation, it wasn't like action, right? It was something that happened with the clock and the person behind it. And I promise that if someone said something on here and I would ask, so somebody made a statement as a former ref, you should have taken command because you knew something was not right. In my opinion, it wasn't a situation where you would know something's not right or wrong because it was, you made a call, that they made the point, like you wouldn't, is that true or false? And because it seems like this is a situation that you wouldn't have taken command.
If we had the confidence that there was 100% something wrong, we would have absolutely corrected it. I think just with kind of the whirlwind of events that were going on in that moment in time, we thought we had it right. And, sometimes we don't. I mean, like I said, if I had known and had the confidence of knowing for sure that that point had just gotten added for the misconduct, I would have corrected it in a heartbeat. I mean, anybody in our shoes would have done that. It's just, so it's not
a weird situation, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, it's just, it's one of those situations you can never really prepare for. And a lot of those kinds of things that happen, you catalog them from when things go wrong. As Sip mentioned earlier, that's how we learn, is we catalog kind of the pain points of weird situations that we've never experienced and trying to navigate them. And that's how we move forward and know how to apply, because we use precedents from previous matches and events to help us moving forward.
Well, I know in life, I've always been told that, you have to fail to succeed. And I think that's what we're told in sports. We're told in business, make mistakes, that's going to happen. And you're not going to be perfect. And I think that this is a situation that'll make you a better ref because of it, right?
Well, I think too, like a fair criticism is like 99 or 95% of the time, right? We have a good mental snapshot of the score in our head, right? But to, when Alex went back center after penalizing the coach for coach's misconduct, and again, to be clear, that is the rule. If you go to the table and question judgment or application, and it doesn't result in me changing my call as a result of that, it's coach's misconduct. And again, in this situation, for that coach, it was merely a warning. But it was when the guy clicked the button on the computer, it popped up as a point, and he didn't even see it until Alex restarted the match.
So Sips, this is
again,
a question. It said, did coach not try to explain it to you, Alex? Or I don't know what trying to do that.
Did Sean articulate where he thought the score was, Alex?
He asked me to check the score because he thought it was wrong. And that's when I asked the question to the table. And that's when the table verified with me. And if there was anything else, I didn't have knowledge of it. And like I said, at that point, there's nothing I can do if I don't have the knowledge of. If he comes back and says, hey, we absolutely need to make sure this is 100% right, then again, we can make that stoppage there. But again, with all the delays and things like that, we're also thinking with the wrestlers in mind, we can't keep delaying this match more than it already has been. And again, in that situation, I needed to, and it's unfortunate.
Somebody, did he just join this? Hold on. Let me see. Oh, no. Okay. Ricky said, I would like to thank Alex and Mike for coming on. I'm not sure if this was already covered or asked, but please ask Alex why, when Coach Sean Sheldon tried to explain the score was wrong, it should not be going into overtime. Why did he or the other official not go to the table and look at the score sheet for themselves instead of just asking the table? Because if the mistake was made at the table, chances are the table was not aware. And of course, we'll say the score was right because they actually thought it was right. So this is something that was just brought up, Ricky. I think maybe you came
we
in
touched on this already.
just a bit late, but we did touch on that. That's there. And then JP Reese just asked, whose job is it to verify the score? And I think you did touch on that too, right? Sean Sheldon said verify the score, and you said I verify the score. So I guess take it from there. I'm just reading the questions to you. So,
and what I would say to that, whose job is it to verify the score? Well, again, if the assistant was keeping score, right, in the corner, somebody had a scorebook in their corner, are we having this conversation? So again, it's a calamity of errors. It's very easy to beat up the official, but there's onus on the coaches as well. So I think
it's easy to do this, right?
Yeah, it's easy to do this, right? But I mean, if we're keeping score like everybody has the right to and should do, are we having this discussion? Probably not, because then you could better articulate why you feel the score is the way it is. But if they didn't even articulate that question at the table, then again, if I'm Alex, I'm just going to go, are we sure about the score too? Are you guys good with, are we good there? And he did. So again,
I agree. And one thing that
one thing's for certain, right? As a result of this, I think you'll get a lot more coaches keeping score in the corner. And then going forward, maybe these situations don't happen. But again, we couldn't account. I don't think the officials could not have accounted for the glitch that existed that we didn't know about, right?
Yeah, and people out there, please stop attacking the kids. Stop attacking.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's
Tal-Shahar. Stop attacking Easton Tobia. These two kids are young men that fight their ass off, and they work their ass off, these two kids. And they go out there and they're doing the best they can. And it's the coaches and the refs that are supposed to get it right or control their life around them. So anybody out there that's attacking the integrity of children, either both these wrestlers or any wrestlers out there, there's no need to do that. These kids are young kids in high school. Let them let them be. Please
Yeah.
just stop
Yeah.
attacking them. I mean, if you want to say, hey, that ref is an asshole, or that coach is an idiot, okay. But these young men that are out there working their butts
Yeah.
off, leave these
That
kids
comes
alone.
that comes with the territory, right? I mean, of us being officials, we know it, right? We learn over time how to shut that off and how to zone out, and just tune coaches out in that regard, or even fans, right? You think about where the state tournament used to be in Lakeland, where the stands were like right on top of the mat. There was no avoiding the fans in that scenario, right? At least we have a little more space at the way the Silver Spurs set up. But that's just something that comes with the territory. For us, it's unfair to the kids. It's not their fault. Their job was just to go out there and wrestle to the best of their ability.
I mean, we've all been young teenagers in our life, right? We go through enough stuff at that age. Leave the kids alone. Frankie, I've never met him personally, but I understand he's an amazing young man, and his brother's an amazing young man, and they kind of lost their cool that night, and that stuff gets into us, and they had every kind of reason, but they're amazing young men. And everybody that's told me about those two brothers tell me that they are above board. And I do know Easton because he wrestles in the club that my son wrestles in, and he's always been very very nice with my kids and an upfront kind of kid. And it's just stop attacking the kids. I've seen on these feeds, and thank God Ricky does keep an eye and does delete some of this stuff, but there's no need to attack children. The children aren't making the calls. That's the only thing I got to say. I mean, it really bothers me to see young men or young women get attacked. That's not fair.
And to kind of piggyback off that, with the wrestlers, you got to remember they're basically in a controlled fight for 6 minutes. And these are kids who sacrifice a lot every day for many years on end to be in that situation. And you can't take it out on the coaches either, because you understand the motivation that these coaches invest a lot of time in the kids too. They're essentially surrogate dads for a lot of these kids who sometimes don't even have parents. And they're just fighting for their kids. And the motivation there is that they're just fighting for their kids. It's not a personal vendetta between coaches and referees or referees and wrestlers. We're all there for the common interest of wrestling, right? We want wrestling to continue because Sip and I both got a lot of value out of it, which compelled us to come back to serving the sport through officiating. The coaches obviously got something to serve the sport through coaching, and the wrestlers will continue that tradition on. And we have to continue to have these kinds of conversations the right way so that we can keep that kind of culture and that element of wrestling that makes it so great and this community so great continue forward that way and stay that way.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to be the ref, and somebody has to be the coach, and somebody has to be the parent, right? Somebody asked, do you think high school finals should be like NCAA with challenge block and video review?
Yeah, I mean, I think that wouldn't be a terrible idea, but that's not in play. So, I mean, what are you going to do? There's really
and I do
not much you can do
appreciate
beyond
this. Cipriano, I did the ask the ref situation because I know we always have questions for the ref. I want to say my show is not about bringing stuff like this to the forefront, and it's very uncomfortable for me, but I really appreciate, Mike, you grabbing me by the ear and saying, hey, let me do this, let me control the conversation, and let's get it out there. And there's been a lot of feedback, really positive feedback throughout this whole show towards Alex, and that's a great thing. And like I said, my show was created to bring positivity and awareness to a sport that I fell in love with, not to bring anger and battles and arguments, but I do appreciate Mike grabbing me and making this happen so that we can kind of do this. So I thank you for that. I appreciate it. I definitely have been trying to avoid, stuff like this, because that's not the purpose of what I started. So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, our job is to bridge the gap a little bit too. When I initially started this with you, I wanted the public to know it's okay to come talk to an official. It's probably not the best thing to do in the heat of a match, but if you want to ask us how we got to the certain understandings at the end of a match, we'll absolutely walk you through. and I think people should know that. And I think
Alex is going to put his private cell phone on the comment bar. No.
But I mean, if you guys are ever happy to go through other matches, I mean, I look at this as a learning opportunity. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of people do. And I know that there were other matches. I know the 38-pound match was something that people had a lot of interest in. I know with time constraints, probably not going to get to it today, but if that's something you guys want to cover next week or another time, I'm always happy to discuss these matches because, again, we use it as a learning tool, and hopefully we can help educate the general public in our community on this stuff as well.
Well, listen, if
Well,
I could
Alex,
see,
I
if I could see Frankie and Rivera wrestle 5 out of 7 matches alone in an arena, I'd spend like $200 just to go in.
Absolutely.
Those two wrestling are like, I mean, let's be real. That's a wrestling match, and that's an art. And watching those two go at it are unbelievable. They're all world, and it's amazing.
they'll both
Go
do-
ahead, Sips. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, but Jake wants to know if you're going to pick up his Disney tab.
for his unborn daughter,
Yeah.
100%. I got you, Jake. Whenever we reopen, that is, I will take care of you for sure.
Go ahead, Sips.
Well, listen, Alex, I think really we don't have to go over the whole Tal-Shahar Rivera match. I think people, that what they want to ask you, let's be blunt, right, is talk about the 2 stall calls and why you came up. Walk us through your frame of mind. We don't have to watch the video. Everybody's seen it a million times, but go ahead and walk them through it.
Yeah,
First stall call, the boundary stall call.
I only have a couple minutes, but to go through that first one, the reason I had hit that first stall call is by rule, it is stalling when a wrestler prevents the opponent from returning to or remaining in bounds. I interpreted that as I see Tal-Shahar's driving, working Rivera to the edge of the mat. I see Rivera circling. So to me, that's him working to come back in bounds and not playing the edge with a half shot. And then I see the drive out of bounds, and that's where I had that call. Again,
in your opinion there, did you feel that Frankie utilized any wrestling moves to get Rivera out of bounds, or was it strictly just like a sumo push? Where
To me, it was a
were you
sumo
in the
push.
thoughts there?
A half shot there or something where that simulates some kind of offensive takedown maneuver changes the narrative on that 100%. I think you totally refrain from making that call if that's the case and let that continue. But to the defense of that call, if you watch the rest of the sequence of that first period, those 2 guys stay in the 10-foot circle the rest of the period. So to me, that's where it shows that it was warranted, is the reaction that they had that stopped happening.
Yeah. And I think, look, stalling's a judgment call, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you asked 100 people, 50 would have it, 50 wouldn't, maybe. I don't know. Even amongst officials, I think you're going to get arguments, on the other side of that. So, okay, talk about the second stall call. So they're towards the boundary line, and there's a mat return that happens. What were you looking at? What's your perspective there?
For me, the situation becomes repeated where they're going out of bounds, and the one where there was the stall 1, I see a lift and I see 3-4 steps going out of bounds, and by rule, wrestler on top has to be working for the fall. And because that situation happened several times to stop wrestling because they go out of bounds, to me, in my judgment, that warranted that second stall call. And you may not even be wrong going technical violation, fleeing the mat there either. But to my judgment, it seemed like stall was the appropriate call in that point.
Okay.
Because in that situation, I didn't see an escape being imminent, and imminent scoring is required for there to be a fleeing the mat call. So that's why I went with stalling.
Because you felt that and unfortunately, even the video footage of that, if you watch that back, the camera doesn't really follow that, because I tried to rewatch that the other night. And the camera's here and the action goes this way, right? So you can't kind of see what happens there. But, stalling's one of those calls too, where it's a judgment thing. You're loved or hated for it, depending on which side you have, which side you're penalizing, I guess. So
Absolutely.
there's
But
that.
at the time, it felt right. And Bob was with me on that. And I've had healthy conversations with officials around the country. Some are loving it, some are not loving it. And that's part of the judgment, is it's a judgment call.
Yeah.
Well, and let's be honest, if you're going to get influenced to make calls a certain way, then you shouldn't be a ref.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I alluded to earlier. You learn over time to zone out a little bit and not be influenced by the coaches. You know, there are some officials that are impressionable that way. Hopefully once you make it to the state tournament, that's kind of, you know, you've kind of been experienced enough to not let that factor in.
Alex, do you take the bottom bunk or the top bunk?
Right now I'm actually in a guest room in Utah with an official friend of mine, and I'm staying in the bottom bunk. And I do apologize. I actually am being summoned to.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I think we
Yeah.
did everything we had to do, right?
Absolutely.
Mike?
But
Yeah, I think so. I think we covered it. Again, you know, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances. It's really a calamity or errors. And I think, you know, Alex was really a stand-up guy to come on here and talk about it. And hopefully it puts this to bed now and we can all move forward and look forward to some solid wrestling next year.
absolutely. And thank you guys for giving me the chance to talk about this. I know obviously there's vested interest in this, and I hope we can all be better for it moving forward.
Yeah, and Sips and Alex, you guys are both in the room, right? So if there's questions or anything that are reasonable, I'm sure they'll reply.
Sure thing.
All right, guys, man, I appreciate you both. And Sips, man, thanks for making me do this. I told you it's not something that I wanted to do or my show is meant for.
Well, I'm not one afraid of conflict. So it needed to be addressed. And I'm tired of everybody getting beat up over it. So we just needed to rip the Band-Aid and finally talk about it.
Yeah, and that was my only thing is just the kids, man. A lot of times I see the kids get attacked. And I just, you know, the refs can go at it, the coaches can go at it, call each other. I'm guessing that every coach in this state probably has every coach's phone number or some way to get them. And I'm sure they can talk about it. But the kids,
yeah,
they're just out there wrestling.
Yeah, it's just a kid. And like I said, there's onus on everybody for this. So we could all get better, and it's a learning experience. That's very unfortunate that it happened. But it's, like I said, I think you'll see a lot of coaches keeping score in the corner, and I think you'll see officials take more time at the table to verify the scores. So I think, and hopefully track has fixed that glitch to where that's not an impact, and that's not impacting any more matches going forward.
Yeah, so I appreciate you. Obviously, you're getting the questions on overturning the results and things like that. I mean, that's out of our hands. And you know, as far as this match is concerned, it's over. So there is no overturning it. It happened. It's coaches lost their opportunity to protest, and then there we have it. Hey, Sips, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
See you, buddy.
All right, buddy.